Welcome to today's Daily Walk in Wisdom. We're in Song of Songs. We're almost at the end. And we're in chapter 6 and verses 1 through to 4. The daughters of Jerusalem are speaking. They say, "Where has your beloved gone, O fairest among women? Which way did your beloved turn, that we may seek him with you?" And the Shulamite responds, "My beloved is gone down into his garden, to the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens, and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feeds among the lilies." The king says, "You are beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, as comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with banners." Wow. The daughters of Jerusalem respond to the Shulamite's description of the king with a deep desire to seek him for themselves. In spite of her vacillating progress, she's induced a positive effect upon those around her. What this means is that we may not be perfect. The church isn't perfect. Nevertheless, God still uses us to influence others and to bring others closer to him. We're not reliant upon how good we are to be an influence to others, because as long as we're growing in our relationship with Jesus, God will continue to shine his light through us. That's very encouraging, especially when we're struggling. We're thinking, "God, how could you use me?" But he does. It's a wonderful thing. Now, the admiration of her by the daughters of Jerusalem is repeated. They call her again, "O fairest among women." Now, traditionally, wisdom is portrayed as masculine, and beauty is symbolized as feminine. Wisdom is attracted to beauty as a man is attracted to a woman, whilst beauty derives protection and direction from wisdom, as a woman finds security and fulfillment in the arms of the man she loves. So we see the alignment between wisdom and beauty on display when Mordecai, who is masculine, provides the wisdom, and Esther, who is feminine, provides the beauty to overthrow the plans of the enemy. They're a type of Jesus, who's masculine, and his church, who is feminine. And so the two combine to be able to bring about the will of God in the earth. Sorry, my puppy is just trying to destroy my efforts here. Let's see how we can progress. So the Shulamite directs the daughters of Jerusalem to where she last saw the king. That's the garden of spices, where he's feeding and gathering lilies. And there were 9 fruits or spices in the garden, each of them relating to the fruit of the Spirit. Lilies are a symbol of purity. Jesus feeds among the lilies, tasting the church's fruitfulness and gathering our holiness to himself. That's what this is saying. Holiness and the fruit of the Spirit relate to beauty. Beauty also has a mathematical dimension in that it aligns symmetry and artistry together. More precisely, it relates to order. When you look at a painting and you think of it as being beautiful, there is a reason why you think of it as being beautiful, and it's because the artistry and the arrangement of it carry a certain symmetry. There's a lot of art out there that's just plain ugly because it lacks symmetry. It lacks true beauty. Now, beauty is order in the world. Beauty also relates to perfection. It is in many ways, beauty is in many ways something that we aspire to. When we see it, it causes our heart to ache for it. Whenever we see beauty, it connects to something deep within us that is more than skin deep, more than skin deep. Beauty is more than skin deep. And it motivates us to the measure of the beauty that we're perceiving. So it motivates, gets a hold of something deep within us and causes us to desire that beauty or to be like that beauty. Holiness relates to wholeness. And when people confess that they are Christians but live a natural worldly lifestyle, then they give evidence of a fractured personality because they haven't got it all together, they're not whole, there's incongruity in their personality, the spirit is warring against the flesh. When we're like this, we can't be authentic. When we're like this, we can't exhibit beauty. Now, holiness is not the spiritual jargon of a bygone era, it's the evidence that we are integrated, body, soul, and spirit. Now, such personal togetherness, when we've got it together, then that's a thing of great beauty, because there is order in our lives. When you find somebody who has it all together in such a way, in this kind of way, this kind of holiness, then you're naturally attracted to them. We're not talking about the kind of holiness that you might think of when you consider a church cleric being also holy. We're not talking about that, which is really a parody of holiness. It's what people think is holiness. We're talking about genuine beauty is the holiness of God in a Christian's life. Further, the greater your integration, the more effective and connected you'll be in your relationships, in your marriage, in your family, and in your church. The more authentic people are in a church, the more whole they are, the more beauty and holiness they exhibit, then the more together that church is going to be. It's a thing of beauty. Now, the Shulamite emphasizes her union with the king. She says, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. Now, previously, she'd claimed, my beloved is mine and I am his, meaning he existed for her. She put herself first. Back then, Jesus browsed among the lilies, but here the king feeds among the lilies. This means that back then, when you placed yourself first, Jesus couldn't feed upon your devotion. But now the proper adjustments have taken place in your life, and Jesus is able to feed upon your love. You've adjusted your priorities, put Jesus first, ahead of you. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine now. You've adjusted your priorities, you've changed things around, and now Jesus is able to feed upon your worship and upon your devotion. Yes. So as soon as the Shulamite makes her ascension, the king reappears. Suddenly he is there. He hasn't been there. Suddenly he turns up again and speaks to her. The bride's confession of the king, her developed understanding, and her contemplation upon him have served to create a likeness within her to the king. By glorifying the king to others, she has transfigured into a higher resolution, a higher rendition of herself. Now, this is interesting. Instead of reminding her of her recent failure, the king instead likens his bride's beauty to three things. See, when we find ourselves reconnecting with God, we're kind of waiting for God to make us feel bad for having separated ourselves from him. The king doesn't do that. As soon as we're restored in our relationship with him, all of our failures are forgotten in the great sea of God's forgetfulness. Instead, he talks about our beauty. we're astonished when he does this. He says that she is as beautiful as Tirzah. Now, Tirzah was an ancient Canaanite royal city that became Solomon's northern capital. It was complete with a residential palace. It was a transformed city. It was transformed by the influence of the king. Now, that's just like the church. We have been transformed. We are ordinary people. Nevertheless, we have been transformed by the King. We were lost people. We were worldly people. But we have become transformed by the King. And so that becomes an exhibition of beauty. And then he says that she is as lovely as Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem was the center of God's government in the earth. Now, today, when the church is the center of God's rule in the earth, then we radiate true beauty. This is why it's so important that the church realizes her place in the earth. And then he says that she is as terrible as an army with banners. This means that the beauty of the church is a terrible beauty, a fearsome beauty, a kind of beauty. She is an army with banners because the Lord, our banner, flies over us. Yes. So a three-dimensional beauty here that the King perceives that we have because of our restored relationship with him. He has a restored presence in our lives. He has a restored government. Remember, Jerusalem was the seat of government in Israel. So the government of God is restored, the presence of God is restored, and suddenly we carry this terrifying beauty, just something that makes people gasp. So beautiful. Have you ever seen beauty that causes you to gasp? That's what it's talking about here. That's what Jesus sees when he looks at his church. And that's the wisdom from the Song of Songs for us today. I'm already in my own preparation in the book of Proverbs, the last level of wisdom that we're looking at. So I know that we have just 9 more studies in the Song of Songs for us to complete the whole book. It's been a bit of a labor, but it's been a labor of love because we're learning all about the wisdom of love. Look forward to sharing with you again soon more from the Song of Songs.